Here we go. We are going to get kicked off today, and I want to welcome anybody that's watching this to the special presentation that's brought to you by the National Independent Staffing Association. And this is going to be a double header today. The first session we're going to be talking about is going to be presented by myself, Dan Mori from Staffing Mastery. We're going to be talking about how to win clients from your competitors. There's a very specific strategy that we use to target our competitors' clients, and I want to share that with you today. So hopefully you can take a little bit more market share in this still recovering economy. And then we will take a short break. And I'm going to be inviting in one of my good friends and interviewing him and talking about what he's doing as sort of a progressive technologist and leveraging technology to level up his recruiting. And it's something that if you are struggling to find candidates today, you're going to want to stick around and hear that, because he's doing some pretty unique things and leveraging some pretty forward-thinking strategies. So I know there's still going to be people rolling in, but I do like to get things kicked off on time. So if you're just joining us here, I want to welcome you to today. This is a special double header presentation brought to you by the National Independent Staffing Association. And the first part is going to be sales focused. We're going to be talking about how to win clients from your competitors. And before I jump into the actual presentation or the content, I do want to cover just a couple of housekeeping items and kind of let you know how we work things with our presentations. I use the chat for Q&A. We've all been on a lot of Zoom meetings, especially over the last year, and we know what it's like to ask the audience for questions, and then no one knows who wants to speak, and all that gets a little bit awkward, and then everyone's unmuted, and you hear background noise, and it ends up being a bit distracting for everybody in the meeting. So what I want to do is during the presentation, as I'm walking through the next 30 minutes or so, and talking about this one specific strategy of how to win clients from your competitors, if you have questions about the information that we're sharing, all you need to do is just put it in the chat box. You can chat it to me. I'm going to be looking at the chat box right in front of me. And if it's something that fits right with what we're talking about, I'm going to answer it right in line. If it makes sense to address it a little bit later, I'll acknowledge it, but then we'll actually go a little bit deeper into the question, either during the Q&A portion or maybe at a different, relevant point in the presentation. So with that, and then again, after about 45 minutes, we are going to take a break at 12:45 Eastern, and we'll have a break about 15 minutes, so you can go check that text message, email, get a cup of coffee, tea, whatever it is you need to do. And then at 1 o'clock Eastern, we're going to be starting promptly with the second portion of our presentation today, where we're going to be talking about technology and how one agency is using some progressive techniques to level up their recruiting. So definitely want to stick around for that. So really quickly, as we get into this first session here, I want to thank everybody for being here today. This is a sales-focused session about how to win clients from your competitors. It is brought to you by the National Independent Staffing Association. I know many of the people that are part of this today are already a member of that group. If you are not, and you are an independent staffing owner and you're looking for a great community, they are an amazing group to be a part of. They really bring out amazing resources for the industry, a lot like today's session. And myself, I'm Dan Mori with Staffing Mastery, and we teach agencies and recruiting firms how to grow their revenue and how to grow a strong business. And today I'm going to be talking to you about a really effective strategy that is designed to grow your sales by targeting the clients of your competitors. Now, I'm going to tell you, it's a pretty simple strategy. It's going to take me about 30 minutes to actually talk to the key components of it. And then I'm going to take some questions at the end. Again, all questions we're going to manage through the chat. So if you have them, just put them in the chat box and I will get to them. So before I jump into it, I want to tell you a funny story about how I came up with this concept of the strategy of targeting your competitors' clients. I remember way back in the day, 10 plus years ago, probably almost 14 years ago at this point, I was really starting out in the staffing industry. I was a salesperson and I was running around like a madman. Like I didn't really have a strategy or a plan or anything like that. And I would literally go to every networking event. I would go to, just walk into random places and drop off brochures and business cards and all of these different things, just trying to get business, and what I found is it's really called random acts of sales. And that's what I was doing. Well, one day I was particularly frustrated and I actually went back to my office and I was talking to one of the recruiters, right? And I was like expressing my frustration, and this particular recruiter was like, well, it sounds like you're whining a lot. And I was like, as the delicate salesperson that I was, I took a little bit of offense, but I was like, well, maybe, but, and then she asked this question that to me was really profound, but to her was completely nonchalant. And she's like, why don't you just call on the clients of our competitors? And I'm just like, And honestly, I never really thought about that specific concept at that point in my career, but then I was like, maybe out of insecurity, I kind of rebuffed and I was just like, well, how would I do that? Like, there's not like a yellow book section. Wow, yellow book section. That tells you how long ago this was. There's not like a section in the phone book that like will tell me like, here are the staffing clients or the staffing companies in the area and here's their clients. And she's like, and I think at this point she realized that she knew something that I didn't know. And I was completely clueless. And she's like, do you mean you really don't know which companies our competitors work with? And I'm like, no, I don't know that. Like how would I know that? And she was like, wow. And like she was at this point, she realized she was in this position of leverage and knowledge and power and all of this stuff and was having a little bit of fun with it. But long story short, she was like, well, it's pretty simple. She's like, there's several ways that we find out as recruiters, who our competitors are working with, and what I'm going to share with you is probably not earth shattering to you today, and a lot of what we teach at Staffing Mastery are truly the fundamentals that work, right? But at this point in my career, this was an earth shattering concept and it became the foundation of something that has led to tremendous growth and really dominance of market share in the markets that we're in. So this is what she said. She's like, well, there's a few ways. She's like, first and foremost, the candidates just tell us, when they're coming in, she's like, when we interview candidates, like we're not the only agency that these candidates are applying with or working with. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And she's like, so we just asked them, like, what other agencies are you working with? Who have you interviewed with? Where have you interviewed? And we kind of want to know because we understand, the quality standards of other agencies, and depending on who they name, that kind of tells us a little bit about maybe their track record or things like that. I was like, that's fascinating to me. And she goes, but some of the other ways, she's like, honestly, just do a resume search. I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, when we're a recruiter, like we'll do a search for a skill and we'll look for machine operator or, software developer or, customer service agent, whatever the keyword is to find a resume. And it's just searching a keyword. She's like, but really, if you want to do this, you can scan into a database and type in your competitors' names, and you're going to see resumes that will show you the people that work for this agency. And I was like, wow, and I started, my wheels started to spin. I started to get it at this point. And this entire thing was born in that moment about how do you actually have a targeted prospecting strategy to go after your competitors' clients. And before I jump in and start breaking this down step by step, I want to tell you why. If any of you have been in this industry for any period of time, you realize that when you go to make a sale, there's really two sales that you have to make. There's two things that you have to sell your prospective client on for them to do business with you. And the first one is why to use an agency in the first place. We know we've all met those HR people out there that are super insecure and they feel threatened by the idea of working with a staffing agency because they feel like if a staffing agency can find somebody, then that kind of devalidates the value of their position, right? And we've all met those kind of insecure people or those protective people. And we know that you have to really convince those people the value that professional recruiters bring in partnering with them. That's like the first sale. You got to convince them. You got to sell them on the concept of working with, an agency. And then the second sale you have to make, or the second thing you have to sell them on, is why choose you, right? So what makes you different? How do you answer that question? So really, this strategy is designed to go right to the point where you don't have to make that first sale. You don't have to convince them why they should be using a staffing agency or professional recruiter. Like they're already doing it. They're already working with your competitor. So you just have to convince them why they should choose you over what they're currently doing. And there's some techniques that you can do through the process